Hello, Internet. Welcome to another Wednesday serial. I'm going to go through my monthly books. You're going to hear about them. It's what we do here. Should be fun. I have these in no particular order because I need to organize them to put them away, but I'm doing this first. First up is the Armageddon game. I'm really happy Tom Waltz is back, moving Turtles to a more plot centric story, which is great. One issue I have with this upcoming, they're calling it an event like a Marvel or DC thing. I take issue with that because there's only the B book, the Armageddon game, or Armageddon game, whatever. Like, this is opening moves, but there's an Armageddon game book by itself without opening moves on the title, and then the Turtles books. It's all part of the Armageddon game Turtles story that you pretty much would have had to have read Turtles up to this point to understand. Usually, the B books for Turtles are separate stories. They may tie in and they're part of the continuity, and some of them are more important to the continuity than others. Some are maybe not as continuity tied, like the Bebop and Rocksteady. There's stuff like the micro series, the Michelangelo, the Jadeka, whatever character it is that they're focusing on, or the villains. Those are big to the overall story, but they are their own self-contained stories. I took it up with a couple of the creators. One wrote back, well, they're separate stories. I'm like, well, but they're not if they're all part of the same event, even if they're focusing on different characters or aspects. It's all tying into this larger story, which I know is why you want to call it an event, but it's just like if it was just Turtles, 159, 160, and you just kept moving up, I think it would be stronger because then it's just the thing through and it's harder to collect and put these in order. Whatever. Marketing aside, I'm looking forward to this. I think it's fun. They're finally playing off the Rat King stuff that they set up on, and the Rat King in IDW is not like the Pied Piper hobo type of character that he's typically been in the past. Here, he's like a god. And so playing with that and these ideas of deity and more Japanese culture, religious aspects, I think is really fascinating because too often we get, you know, the Christian idea for that stuff. And I love the fact that it's a different kind of culture and mythos, and a mythos with multiple gods. Because if you're going to do that kind of thing, that's part of what I think appeals people to Thor is there's all these great characters. It's effectively the full mythos, obviously built in, which works on a superhero level. So, but one I'm more interested in because Thor has never really grabbed me. Right. Next up is Amazing Spider-Man. This is 8. This is Wells Romita Jr. and Hannah is inking Romita Jr. So for a while, I didn't see that, and I thought maybe Hannah not inking was making JRJR's art worse, but that's not the case. And it's hard because some of what was brought over from JRJR's Superman run that was pretty well like, it's all right, but it looks weird. There's weird proportions, there's weird angles on things. It just doesn't look right. A lot of that's coming over into Spider-Man now, which wasn't there previously, which is why JRJR was so lauded on Spider-Man. But more appropriately, it was just really good comic book art. Here, the like comic book side of things, storytelling, all that's still great. But the proportions, just the characters, it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty good, better than a number of other artists. So I'm enjoying that. Um, the story is hard right now because Norman Osborn has been washed away from his sins in the previous run, and so now he's making moves to try to make amends with Peter. And now he's basically hiring Peter, and Peter has this special spider suit with armor that's been done a million times, whatever. And then he's on a glider, and he kind of has this pumpkin bomby thing, and it feels like Peter working with Norman, even if his sins are absolved, like that doesn't make him a good person. And his sins weren't really absolved. He just, I don't know. I don't know what they were going for because the what happened in the story, if you missed it, and if you did, good on you, because it's some of the worst stuff I've read. The Sin Eater shoots Norman Osborn with his mystic shotgun, and Norman's sins are absolved, or he doesn't, like, he feels bad, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense though, because for a sin to be absolved by pretty much any cultural standard, that has to be weighed by society and by the victims. So it just doesn't make sense on any emotional level, which is where Marvel stories reside. You have to go for the emotional cadence first. And if that doesn't work, the story doesn't work. So there's that. And then there's the fact that Peter's working with Norman, which makes no sense. Peter wouldn't work with Norman even if his sins were resolved. He doesn't like Norman. He's never liked Norman. So it just doesn't work. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And we know the ball, the other shoe's going to drop. Like, I don't know. It just feels like a waiting game at this point for the obvious thing to happen. And at this point, it's going to be years because they have to make it look like Norman wouldn't, and he's actually changed. We do this, and we're going to have a moment where it could have been Norman, but it wasn't, to really distract us from the fact that when it does happen, which will probably be at the end of Wells' arc, and then everything gets reset to the status quo, and it's a little exhausting. Because, yeah, that's going to take years to play out. In the meanwhile, I hope we get good stories like the Tombstone story that this arc started with, or run started with. So, yes. All right, mood lighting. I don't know why, but I am weirdly white on this camera today. Next up is Black Panther. I guess it's my screen. Okay. Black Panther, this has been kind of interesting. There's a lot of ideas of T'Challa being a figurehead, Wakanda becoming more of a democracy. It's part of this new wave at Marvel, though, and this is very in line with the X books, though not part of those at all in any way. I just mean like the direction of this political ideal being a certain way, and it being kind of the society fitting what people want and not having like a noble king, because that's not an idea that people think as highly of anymore. And so they want Wakanda to be a democracy, but they are also kind of playing with the problems of that. But also then you do have this figurehead that you don't just reject completely. And so making Black Panther in kind of that British mold, I find interesting, because the idea is to reject the ideas of colonialism usually overall, but they're kind of adopting them because they don't have a better model to work off of or any other ideas to implement. From a high level, like political look at this book, it doesn't quite jive, but also that's part of the story in some ways too. But it's so much more focused on someone's assassinating a bunch of sleeper agents that T'Challa put into power a while ago, which again plays into the politics thing, but it's focused on, this part of it, not the actual like political side of it. And I think the book would be a lot more interesting if it was more the political side and playing with the ideas that they're putting forward. But I also don't know the writer because the writer's putting this forward, right? So I don't know if they're aware of kind of the faults that they're leaning on or not, or if they're just leaning on them because they're moving this forward. I like, that's an impossible Rubicon. Like, you'd have to talk to them to know. And that's a pretty easy lie to concoct. Of course I know, but I'm just trying to tell the story. Okay. So I don't know. I'm dropping this book. A big part of it, though, is that the art is there. Like, unlike JRJR, all the figures are there, everything's there, but it's really just flat. There's no comic book storytelling here, and there's not much movement in any given issue. We are at issue 8, and we've really only told one story, and not a particularly complicated one. It is kind of a espionage thriller thing, so they have to kind of dole out information at a pace. But because there's not a ton else going on, it's slow. It's just slow. It's not moving fast enough. It's not telling what it needs to tell, and it's not grabbing me. So I'm letting it slide. I might have another issue or two because working through DCBS, by the time you make a decision, it takes a couple months for that to roll around. Next up is Edge of the Spider-Verse. I have 1 and 2 here. Just an anthology of random superhero or pulpy nonsense. All the characters are supposed to have a spider theme, but I mean, outside of the dressing of it, like a costume, what does it really mean? Like, a lot of these characters have webs, I guess, so there's like a power idea, but there's nothing like in the story that's really connecting these characters. So it's just a weird anthology. There's some fun stories here, and since a lot of them are like 2 to 3 pages, it comes and goes. If you, I don't know, if you're a Spider-Man fan but don't like a lot of the side stuff, totally skip it. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I have some affinity for it, but I'm so steeped in that at this point that I feel like I'd be pulling every little reference, whereas most wouldn't, nor should they. Yeah. To that end, the Spider-Man 2099 Exodus will not end. They have X-Men 2099 here, but it's not the X-Men 2099 that ran when 2099 was running. So that really, like, this issue really killed the pooch for me. At this point, I'm buying the whole event because I think there's one more issue. But this sucks. Like, if you're a 2099 fan, which I tried, I own a lot of it, but I couldn't really get into because it was like Marvel, like with the code trying to do cyberpunk, but I mean, you can't have that real like filth and like level of debasing and lack of humanity really shown and have a superhero tale at the same time without really going into something that Marvel is known for not doing, and most I guess of these publishers that come and go, or something like The Boys might happen, that's willing to go there, but it almost has to come from a counterculture aspect to go there. Marvel just isn't willing to do it. And I know this was spun up because essentially that Cyberpunk game came out and there was a big flare up for Cyberpunk and kind of the culture. I saw a lot more people talking about, oh gosh, now I bring it up and I can't remember the name. The book that started Cyberpunk with the guy who's a runner and yada yada. I don't know, but a few famous Cyberpunk books. The Matrix got a spin up. It was in the culture for a moment. Then Marvel, by the time they get a comic book out, it's kind of past and it wasn't there to begin with. I don't know. Oh. Speaking of, Spider-Punk 4 came out. This is trash. Don't read it. If you care about Spider-Man and that stuff, not really here. Another pastiche that's easily tossed aside. If you care about punk culture, Marvel trying to do that? Marvel trying to do punk? Are you fucking kidding me? They don't get it. They can't get it. Not now. Here's the funny thing. Ironically, when they were doing Spider-Man 2099, if they were doing Spider-Punk, I genuinely think it might have worked. Because that was back when Marvel was a company and they could take that on. Also, the idea that was been around the time where grunge was bigger, but there's also kind of a pop punk thing. I don't think Marvel would capture like Guttermouth or anything, but like Nerf Herder, kind of that tie into the nerd stuff where some of it was referencing comics too. Like that could have worked. But now it's a big Disney property. It just doesn't make sense. And also, ironically, okay, this comic, Spider-Gwen, Gwenverse, trash, bad. This is just bad. But the original Spider-Gwen run kind of had this punk aesthetic that worked. It was actually more of a Spider-Punk book than Spider-Punk ever can be, because it actually hit on some of those ideas and took the time to actually build them out. So I don't know, just a weird bunch of stuff that kind of circled around each other there based on the way I piled it up. Huh, who knew? Yeah. And then next, Spider-Man Miles Morales. This is, I forget if it's the last or the penultimate issue of Hamid's run. Hamid's. I can't pronounce anything. Um, which I think is a shame because his run has been incredible. It's made me love Miles so much more. It's, I think, some of the best stuff Marvel's been putting out for its duration. And at a time when Amazing was at its worst, this was the best thing coming out of the Spider Office. But this last run that's in an alternate universe with a dark version of Miles playing off of Miles' own Clone Saga thing, it's not bad, but it is the least of this run. And it really feels like a shame to go out on this. It also, I mean, because I know the numbers matter for things, and hitting a certain issue of a run actually gives a run more prestige and more importance as the years run on. We're at 41. I know it would have been another leg, but if this run got to 50 issues, I think in, 3 years' time, it would be more remembered. Although 3 years after that would be another, couple of years, so 5 years. My point being, though, like, it's just such a shame to go out now for so many reasons. It actually does kind of hurt the run, the prestige of it. But if there's a better project, that's ultimately always better. I'm curious to see what happens with Miles next. But if it doesn't grab me, I'm also at a point with the character where if it's not good, I'll drop it. I think I'm at a point where, like, anything like Miles or Gwen or any of that, if it's not good, I just need to let it go. I had this mentality for years now, especially because I was doing that Spider-Man podcast of just getting everything Spider-Man. And the more I come back to it, there's a lot of B books and stuff that I think is some of the best of Spider-Man. I think, well, if you only look at Spider-Man through Amazing, which is what some people do, you're missing a lot of the best stuff of the character. But also, there are a lot of tertiary books that are very easily missed, and you can develop a sense for it after time. Or I say that, but I've never been able to really do that, but I at least give it a whirl, so I don't know. Also, for the Spider-Man collection, I got the facsimile of the first annual. This is in my Nimbus that Sleepy Reader got me, so thank you again for that. But I don't know. I'm never going to buy an original copy of this. I know that. Just the value to what I get out of it is just not there. But having this does open up my collection. It costs, God, they charged $8 for this, which is too much. But because I have a steep discount, it cost less. So I don't know. I dove in. I just know this was going to make more of an impact in my collection than number of other things I got. Next up is Damage Control. Apparently from the creators of the Goldbergs. I don't even know what that is. The humor in this didn't particularly grab me. It also felt like you should have known Damage Control before, which I don't. And I don't know. It's the sort of the corner of Marvel I usually love, and it is just not hitting me this time. I'm kind of in it for now because I believe that this is like a 6-issue mini, so I'm already up to issue 4 in purchasing, so I'll probably just write it out. But I don't know. I think it's missable. I think if you're looking for a yuck yuck book, even there's probably better options. Next up is Dark Crisis. I wish I could talk more intelligently about this book. I am having a time trying to follow it. I haven't been reading much DC, and this is playing off of so much. They killed so many characters before. Like, it's like they killed the Trinity again, or put them in a place where they're not active, so that they're not there to be leaned on. But God, it's like they do that every 3 years now. and something bad is happening, but Hal Jordan's back, even though he was dead last I remember. I'm honestly not able to follow it anymore. I grabbed the Green Lantern issue, which is half of it, then there's another half of a backup, and there's so much stuff. The other reason it's hard to follow again is the storytelling of the art. Things just happen and you're at like completely different scenes on different frames. There's no continuity in the motion. And it's too much. It's trying to follow like multiple teams of characters and show you the villains and do all this stuff. And it's just so much information in all these like nether spaces where there's no texture or grounding. And it doesn't feel like there's a story. It's like they just want this event to happen, and these characters just need to be placed with certain other characters or in certain places so that someone can die, can have emotional resonance, and then we go to the next. And it's just like bad things will happen, and we need these people here to make the bad thing happen. I don't know. I think it's crap. There you go. That's my thought. Next up is Daredevil issue 2, 650. This is a continuation of Zdarsky's run. Zdarsky's had an interesting run with Daredevil. It's been very lauded by the general Daredevil fan community. Frankly, I think it's the least of the modern Daredevil runs. At this point, I've read through volume 2, so Kevin Smith up. Some of it's been a while. And from what I know, like Diggle's pretty much the black sheep. The whole Shadowland event was not much loved, and understandably. And then after that, I know anybody watching this video basically probably would have been fans or heard fond things of the Wade run that lasted a really long time. My understanding is that's actually pretty divisive for a lot of Daredevil fans because the lightning of the character is a touchy topic. I think that's silly. I think after some of the places where they've put Daredevil before, lightening him up was the only way to do something fresh, and to just make his life more miserable was just kind of like, if you don't bring him up a little bit, there's nowhere to bring him down to. It just wouldn't have made any sense. So I enjoyed that, and I generally think a lot of Marvel stories do better by lessening the stakes and making it more comprehensible. That way there's characters, textures, you tend to bring in more side characters, you tend to have more setting, you tend to have the elements that make a good story, more so than where a lot of Marvel is, which is so heightened it loses its purpose. So here we have a different angle with Daredevil. It's not Matt Murdock being dragged through anything as much, but it's Elektra dragging him into a war with the Hand, and they're going to fight them. And it's prophesized essentially that Elektra is going to die in doing this. In the process of bringing Matt on, she's kind of taken up the Daredevil mantle as well, so she's wearing all this. I don't know. I don't dislike it. I just think after Soul and Wade, it's not as compelling of a run. So I don't know, but it's good. It's interesting. I know a lot of people are taking pricing. Also, it's issue 2, but $6.50, and then the next one's supposed to be a big one as well. And it's Marvel milking it, which is annoying. But I know we'll be kind of past that soon. Though there'll probably be another flare up when the new Daredevil show comes out. We'll see how that goes. I don't know. I'm on board, and I think as I lessen books, I might actually appreciate it more. I noticed I kind of hit a point with the amount I was buying that I needed to pull back because I was just skimming through some books. Duo issue 4. If you saw my last couple of videos, I talked about this book. I think it's worth getting. But at this point, the pieces are in place and things kind of need to move forward. I'm kind of curious to see if the ending has anything to say more so than the beginning of this book. There's some interesting play with immortality and some different ideas here, and some things actually being explored in X-Men with the Eternals attacking the X-Men over the idea of immortality. So I guess that's in the air right now, but I mean, this book is condensed on that idea and much stronger with it. Apparently, it's also only a mini, so I mean, maybe it'll continue if it gets enough sales. I don't know if I'd even want that, but I'm intrigued. I like this, and I'm going to stick it out. Next is 007. I started reading this and I remembered I enjoy a Bond movie, but they wander all over the place, and I'm usually not able to quite follow the thread of, we went here, we went there, we went here, and why did we go to that third place again? And I'm feeling like I'm really going to get lost in this book, so I'll probably get a couple more because I'm already signed up for them again, but I don't think I'm going to continue with this book too much, but maybe it'll surprise me. So, I don't know, it was hard to get a sense for a first issue. This very well might be something that reads far better in trade. Next up is the Fantastic Four 46. After the whole Forever War thing, this was a nice wind down, but it is Slott's last issue. So next we move into the Fantastic Four being part of some stupid mega event. I'll ride that out and then continue. At this point, I own like every Fantastic Four comic, so I'm not going to be dropping that. Next up, oh my god, I felt robbed. This is the giant-sized Gwen Stacy. This is a trade of the Gwen Stacy mini that came out that I bought every issue of. It's a soft cover too, so it's not like the nice stock that they put on trade. I mean, it's $10. I felt ripped off. And then there's A Thing Called Truth, issue 5. This mini has been really delightful. It's a slice of life kind of comic. It's heightened, but there's nothing sci-fi or anything like that. It's the kind of thing that I think is really interesting. There's enough expression and stuff in here. I do genuinely think it earns itself as a comic and not something that would have been better to just tell in prose. I think this is a really cool mini. I'm sure most of you missed this one. I know there will be a trade. Totally get this in trade. I don't think there's going to be any reason to go back and get these in issues. I think it'll just be a delightful story to sit down and read, and reading it all at once will make it all the stronger. Deadly Class 55. This book is wrapping up, but as each issue kind of moves through like years, and so you don't need to have the continuity of each issue, because I lost the thread on this book a while ago. I've actually been really enjoying Deadly Class again as it winds down. And I really like these characters that had all this history, and now as adults, they're kind of coming together in their twilight years, and I don't know, I appreciate it. I love it. And now that it's coming to an end, it's not that I don't want it to end. It's just I do definitely feel like some of the last issues before the time jump were meandering and weird, and there's some stuff. And now that we're here and it's like years packed into pages, I really wish that there were maybe just a few more issues to just flesh out a little bit more here, because there's moments here that we just rush by and it's just a little too much to take in, and it feels like the pacing's off, maybe in a good way. Maybe I just want a little more because I'm enjoying it now, but I do genuinely think it would be a stronger story if there were a few more issues to just flesh out this ending part compared to what we're getting. So, but there's a little bit more left, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll see that as we reach the finale. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Oh, no, I do. So this is funny. So Amazing Spider-Man 7, I put aside. I'm not going to pull it out, but this is a misprinted issue. I had to write in about it. The pages weren't stapled in the process of putting the comic together, so there's a few floating pages here, but like the front two are for earlier in the comic and the back two are for later in the comic. So I like spoiled myself reading it and then had to like put it back, like had to flip to read in a weird way. Not a very pleasurable experience. Also, as far as misprints go, this isn't going to be worth anything. So maybe I should just send it off to CGC, see what I get for it. I don't know. And then there was True Kilt. This is a fun little story about a guy who works at a fast food joint who's thieving on the side. And there's some plan there. It seems like an interesting book. The first issue is laying down a lot. I'm really just curious to see where the second issue goes. I haven't necessarily made up my mind on the series, but I'm definitely intrigued for the next. And this is the sort of thing that you pick up comics for. You don't know where it's going, and it's fun, and you want to see the next. So, yeah, there was all that. Sorry if it's bright, but I just need the light on. Yeah, so next up is the Dead Lucky. This is part of the Radiant Black series. Different take, different culture kind of deal going on, obviously. Kind of fun, but again, a first issue that's kind of set against all this stuff. I'm enjoying Radiant Black, but I wish they'd keep things to one book again. There's a reason for the side stories, though. I understand it. It's just a bit much to follow, and I'm kind of missing the days of buying a comic a month. Radiant Black continues. We're getting a little more superhero hijinks, I feel, at this point. I'm enjoying the book, but I want things to start coming together a little more. They're spending so much time building that just waiting for something to drop. Once in Future apparently is just wrapping up real quick. I didn't realize, so I'll write it out, but I was kind of falling off this book a bit. Honestly, at this point, I think this was a good idea, but I think they should have planned on it being a little tighter, and I'm kind of excited to see the talent from this book move on to projects that maybe are a little more fresh at this point. New Fantastic Four #3. This is a fun throwback with Peter David. Again, that Christian stuff I was talking about before, though. So, I don't know. It was fun, though. I'd recommend it. I think it's one of the better things Marvel's putting out. There's Miss Marvel and Moon Knight. They're doing a series of these Miss Marvel team-up books that kind of have a MacGuffin through line. Moon Knight. They're wrapping up, like, I guess technically the third story in this. They're taking more of a therapist angle. I don't know. Honestly, I'm skimming the book at this point. I'm dropping it. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I would say it's not grabbing me. And it's certainly not the best. The most fun moments in Moon Knight are the ones they talk about, never the ones they show. And that don't fly in comics. Speaking of Iron Cat, this heist between Black Cat's old friend and Iron Man being caught in the middle. This has been an absolute excellent thing. If you haven't been following McKay's Black Cat, it keeps building and building. Again, the way things are presented here bugs me, because McKay has been doing Black Cat for a good long while and would have a pretty substantial run with the character at this point, but they keep splitting it into minis. I don't think it's serving it well, because there's a longevity with the character being built here for a character that's never had that. And in the Marvel tradition, that means something, and it's being undercut by the way it's being presented, which is a shame. But good stuff. The Network, playing off of social media fears and whatnot. The art in this book is so sketchy, and I don't know, like, it's kind of interesting, but everything's kind of blotched out. You can kind of see some of this. I personally don't care. It's not grabbing me. Next up, also from Awa, is Absolution. This book didn't really grab me either. It's supposed to be a big, action thriller kind of deal, and it just didn't grab me. Everything from All Us has sounded interesting, and then I get it, and I don't like it. So I think I'm just done with the publisher. I've tried a number of books, and it just never grabs me. Um, Next up, kind of in the same line with the art, are a series of Judgment Day books. Judgment Day, Kill the Mutants, da da da, and all of them. I can't follow it. It's too many characters. There's all these quote unquote big ideas, and then the Avengers get thrown in, and I don't like. I get there's a big fight going on, but I don't know. I was trying to pay attention at this point. I was just kind of burning out. I'll have to go back and reread Judgment Day to give it a fair assessment because I know I'm not really putting my all in there to follow it, but it's not grabbing me. But the Immortal X-Men Judgment Day bit, playing with Exodus and the history of the mutants there, that was more interesting, and also because it's focusing on a character within the story, it's a lot easier to follow as you go. X-Men Red kind of grabbed me. I think it's a shame X-Men Red's being grabbed into this because they were playing with some stuff on Mars I didn't necessarily love, but they were at least going somewhere with it, and then dragging it into this event undercuts it majorly. The X-Men book being there happened. Yay, it's the new cast of X-Men too, so I don't know. We haven't really had a chance to see them work as a team, and they're already in an event, so I would have liked at least a small story with the team dynamic being shown against a, small threat. X-Force 30, Deadpool's on the team now. Yay. I know that there's a Deadpool book coming again. Curious to see how that does because the last one was cut short before its potential was even shown. So I don't know. It's so curious because for so many years, Deadpool just couldn't have enough books. It's just Deadpool all the time, and he got oversaturated, no question. But now it's like they can't even hold a book with Deadpool, which I don't necessarily mind if they're not going to give a creator a good, decent run with the character. Make him a side character. Have him hop around Marvel. Have him be in X-Force. Have him show up in whatever Avengers book. Sure, make him an element in there. But if you're going to do these short runs that only last like 12 issues, but they're sucked into an event partway through, and then they have to deal with 2 issues of being cut off early and just trying to wrap things up, I don't want that. I want a good, decent story to move forward. So, I don't know. That's my thoughts. Legion of X has been interesting and allowed to kind of float on its own laurels. I don't know, but it's continuing with the dynamics of Kane and Xavier and Legion. Marauders is continuing. I don't know. It's so funny. I love Dugan on this book, and then when he left, I'm not enjoying it as much. But I was also enjoying X-Men, and then Dugan took that over, and I'm not enjoying it as much. Just everything with this second phase of whatever the Krakoa era, Destiny of X, I guess they're calling it, just is less. It is less every step of the way. New Mutants is really interesting. They're trying to wrap up some things with magic and build some stuff up with the Goblin Queen, Madeline Pryor. And because I kind of skimmed through the last couple of issues, I couldn't really follow this one. But this is making me want to go back and reread this run of New Mutants. I have a feeling there's a lot more here than I was giving it credit for. Also really interesting because Madeline Pryor is going to be a big part of the next X event. God, that's exhausting. That ties in with Spider-Man, so I'm on board because I'm already getting everything. There's going to be a couple tie-ins with like Miss Marvel or Venom or whatever. I'm just not going to bother. Then, oh my God, X-Men Green. This was excellent. There's Nature Girl, Worst part of the book is her name. She's this character who can commune with animals. I'm guessing she was priorly established somewhere. It hardly matters. She's a young mutant. She has these antler things that are apparently really deadly. She can commune with nature. She gets fed up when a sea turtle washes up on Krakoa's shore and decides to just... She walks in the convenience store from where the bag is from and like scolds the manager about it. The manager's like, whatever, turtle wasn't smart enough to not eat the bag. So then she just starts killing people who are committing environmental crimes. And that's a problem. Xavier sends Wolverine after her, and Logan Wolverine, the Wolverine proper, if you will. I'm sure some will take issue with that, but God, there's a quick thing. I don't mind the legacy idea and stuff, but I mean, when you do that, inevitably, yeah, it kind of puts the other characters in secondary space. That was said forever, but you couldn't sell the characters without doing that. Now it's coming around again when people are saying, well, this makes them kind of tertiary or secondary to the white male characters. No shit. That's why you need to have the other characters. And within X-Men, it's not like the sales of a specific character matter as much. So build up the legacy. And now they're kind of eating that, and it's been weird to watch that cycle come around. Anyways, Wolverine goes to attack Nature Girl, but like she sticks like a grizzly bear on him and does all this other stuff. She does a fair amount, but she's breaking the one law, kill no man, and she's killed a lot of people, but for environmental needs. And it's hard to do that, but it starts off with like she's willing to kill, but it does it to a point, and then she kind of like gets bathed in some like dark oil stuff and then goes like full supervillain, just starts killing people indiscriminately. It definitely crossed a line with me and where I was, and I kind of hated it because I would love the idea of her, like Poison Ivy, to be an eco-terrorist, but to have a line, to have a moral, to have a point, and be there. And it is probably too far for the heroes of our story. But if you make them cross a line that just makes them pure evil and just pure villain and not stick to the difficult issues of the ethos and the fact that often in order to change history and to make meaningful impact, usually people have to die. Violence does create change. You can't argue that. I mean, everything about why people are attracted to the Punisher on some level, but I mean, bring it to a more interesting idea than just vigilantism. Have characters like that, make the characters sing, and then you'll have characters to tell more stories with. Because of where this is headed and what they did to Nature Girl partway through, they really handicapped what was one of the most fascinating reads I've had in a long time. So there was that. Then there's Wolverine Patch. It's just another Hama Wolverine story. I don't even know what else to say about that. And then there's X-Men Legends, continuing off of X-Men Legends, but with a different font, and now it's #1 again. It doesn't matter here. Unlike, I've been complaining about this thing throughout, right? It doesn't really matter here because all these stories are like placed in different parts of the continuity, so I care less. But why? Like I don't necessarily care. I just want to know what the thinking was here. Like why? I bought all the other X-Men Legend books. I'm buying this one too, but why? But this one's going back to Wolverine fighting the Hulk. It was fun. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so I bought a lot of comics. I'm going to look at buying some less. There's also some trades I bought. I feel like if I'm going to talk about those, I'll talk about those differently. Yeah, cheers. Thanks if you watched this meandering ramble of a video with immaculate visual presentation. And cheers.